Hello, this is Tony Blazer back with another video for the Motocross Vault on YouTube. And what this one's going to be are my 5 questions I want answered at St. Louis. Last week was an amazing season opener at Anaheim. I think all of us would agree there were some surprising outcomes. I certainly didn't see Barcia winning. He was completely off my radar. I expected Kenny Roczen to come out and kick some butt. The Eli struggling wasn't too much of a surprise. I think he's kind of inconsistent early on, but to see Adams Cirillo going so fast and Barcia up front was a surprise. And I'm curious to see what happens this week. So I came up with my 5 questions I hope to have answered this week. If you like this sort of thing, check out some of the other stuff I've done on the channel. Most of my stuff is not race reviews. I don't really specialize in that. Most of the stuff is more like classic bike reviews, things like that. Looking at classic machines, some classic motocross magazines, mostly older stuff, but I thought it'd be fun this year to do a few videos about the races as they go. See if everybody likes it. If they like it, I'll keep doing it. And if they don't, maybe we won't. So if you'd like to support the channel, just give it a subscription, ding the little bell. I'd appreciate that. If you'd like to support what I do here, consider maybe getting some Motocross Vault merch. I just came out with this new tee here. It's available in the store. The link is in the description below. So here are my 5 questions I want answered at St. Louis round 2.
Number 1.
My first question for St. Louis is, will the switch up from Glendale, one of the West Coast tracks, to St. Louis impact the results greatly? Typically, early on in the season, you get a lot of hard-packed tracks, a lot of more slippery California-style dirt. Glendale is usually a pretty exciting race, but we don't usually go east till much later in the year. It's probably most of the teams have been testing on West Coast dirt, unless maybe JGR was testing back east. But even them, I would expect to have spent the last month or so in California. So it is interesting to see them kind of mix it up. Typically, like I said, St. Louis has a totally different style of dirt. You're going to end up with a much tackier dirt typically. This track's pretty interesting this week, too. When I looked at the track map, it doesn't look like there's any traditional triples, per se. A lot of rhythm sections. It actually looks like a fun track. I think it should be cool. Of course, it's hard to tell just from a picture how the track's going to shape out. But I am curious to see if the change in venue actually has a material difference in the race results. Last week, like I said, was pretty interesting. I didn't expect that outcome. And it will be interesting to see if having a totally different style of dirt shakes things up, makes things more comfortable or less comfortable. Guys like Eli and Kenny and some of the guys that struggled last week, maybe they'll be a little more comfortable in the more tacky stuff, or it might end up the same thing. I don't know. I'm curious to see it. I think it's kind of crazy to make the teams drive halfway across the country, but in any case, it should make the race interesting nonetheless.
Number 2.
My second question for St. Louis is Justin Barcia for real? I was hugely surprised for Justin last week. Really pumped for him. Super happy. I've not always been the biggest Barcia fan. I think sometimes he does some pretty ridiculous stuff on the track, but I love seeing him kind of resurrect his career the last few years. I was super pumped for him a couple years ago when he got on the Yamaha's kind of a replacement thing, came out and rode really well, got a couple of podiums, but then he ended up, I think, facing a jump and screwing things up for himself at maybe round 2 or 3. And then last year, of course, he won A1 and then really didn't do anything the rest of the year. I understand. I think he hurt his wrist, if I remember right. But my question would be, can he keep it going? Is it just one of these weird A1 flukes? A1 is always known for kind of strange outlier results. Josh Grant winning. There is a lot of pressure that day. The bike setup always plays a major factor. You're not sure if you have all that stuff sorted out initially. So it's going to be interesting to see if that really was a fluke, or if Justin is a new guy. If he has that Yamaha dialed, apparently he's running more of a mellower stock setup to allow him to run the beans out of it, more of his rever style. It's trusting him to work at A1. St. Louis is going to have completely different dirt, different track, much tackier stuff. Typically, Barcia, I think, is an East Coast guy. You'd think he'd do okay at it, but I'm curious to see. I'd love to see Barcia be a championship title threat here, probably for the first time in his career since maybe when he was a rookie and he came out and did real well early on. He's had these weird wins every now and again, and I'd love to see him keep going. Obviously what we all hope for is a huge battle all the way to the end. The more guys that are up front, the better. So can Justin Barcia keep it going in St. Louis?
Number 3.
My third question for St. Louis, can Eli Tomac bounce back? I wouldn't call A1 a disaster for Tomac. Certainly he had, maybe an off night. Apparently he had struggled with some arm pump. The track was rougher, choppier, kind of, I guess it developed a little different than what they were expecting. And like I said, Eli doesn't always kill it early on in the season. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was 2 years ago when he was walking away with the race and ended up having a kind of a stupid crash, busted his pants, had his pants falling down. Certainly not as bad as that. But I don't think the result he got was what the team was looking for. The question for me is, can he bounce back? Is he going to be back at the front this weekend, or is this a problem? The arm pump thing is going to end up developing and continuing over several weeks. Sometimes, usually any of us who experience arm pump know it's usually you're not comfortable with the bike, you're hanging on too tight. That might be because the bike setup is wrong. It could just be nerves, A1, hard to say. Eli is such an enigma. He could come out and just smoke everybody this weekend, or he could get another 5th or 6th. I would be not surprised by either result, but I'm curious to see if he gets up front and he can kind of do a little damage control, get himself right up towards the front. I mean, it's first round. It's not damage control's maybe a little strong, but if he has another 7th, another 6th, something like that, 3 or 4 rounds in, he's in a hole again, and he's doing the same thing he's done the last couple of years where he's having to play catch up. He ends up winning a lot of races, but not able to make it up at the end. And the Eli, he's had a diminishing returns the last few years. His win totals have gone down a little bit each year. I wouldn't say he's past his prime. He just won the 450 outdoors, but it wouldn't be completely unheard of. At some point, you start slowing down a little bit. Maybe you're not willing to take those chances as much as you did before. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it, but I'm curious to see. It's a big question mark for me this weekend, whether Tomac is going to be able to come back and he'll be a threat for the win this week, or he's going to be another kind of a mid top 10 guy.
Number 4.
My number 4 question is very similar to 3, actually. It has to do with Kenny Roczen and whether he is 100%. Another guy that had kind of a mediocre, middling result at A1. Again, not a disaster. He got 6th place. He looked pretty fast early on, but then really dropped off the pace. I thought he was going to, surely get a 3rd and catch Cooper Webb, who was suffering from an illness, but didn't happen. In fact, he got passed by Blake Baggett and ended up, like I said, 6th. I'm not sure what's going on with Ken. He claims that he had set up his bike really stiff at A1, probably to prevent that hideous buck cartwheel deal he did a couple years back, where he let the bike kind of drop down the stroke too much, and then it rebounded him over the bars. Not something you want to have happen. So I can certainly see him going a little bit more on the cautious, stiff side. Probably another one of the effects of that crash. If he had not had that crash, he probably would not be doing something like that now. But now, the last thing you want to have happen is a massive yard sale get off. So I totally understand him going cautious. But when the track deteriorated, got kind of choppy, I think it made the bike hard to ride. And at least that's what he says was going on. It wasn't hot. The weather was really cool. So I wouldn't think it's the same health issue, hopefully. But I'm curious to see. He was my pick to win. I thought going in that Kenny would come out, guns blazing and maybe finally get that first win since his injury. But it didn't happen. I'd be curious to know if the St. Louis dirt will be more to his liking. Maybe get the bike a little more comfortable for him. I don't know. Like I said, it's hard to say. With the switch to the East Coast style track, it could throw out all those settings that they've been working on may not work. So it kind of is a little bit of a wild card early in the year here. And I'm curious to see if Kenny can come back. I hope he can. I hope he is 100%. I hope A1 was an outlier. And that is definitely one of my questions. Will Ken Roczen be back at the front?
Number 5.
All right, for my 5th and final question for St. Louis, should Adams Cirillo be considered a legitimate contender for the Supercross title? I think most people were surprised by Adams' speed at A1. I mean, obviously he was one of the most touted amateurs since Ricky Carmichael, but he really had a tough go early on in his career. The fact that he turned things around last year still had a lot of people, including myself, wondering if this is like the new status quo for Adam, if he's going to be like at the front all the time, or if the move up to the 450s would take him a while. It sure didn't seem to. He was the fastest guy in practice, pretty much the fastest guy all day. Should have won the main event if it weren't for some minor little crash. And then he showed like championship material smarts to take a second after he had that triple casing. He could have easily ate crap there. He was lucky to save it, and he didn't ride his balls off trying to pass Barcia at the front. He was smart to take a second. The track was getting tough and slippery, and basically he rode like a champion. You take it when you can take it, and when you don't, you settle down and you don't crash. That was the new Adam at A1. I'm curious to see if that same Adam will be at St. Louis. If he comes out and sets the board on fire again, I think these guys will realize, they're in for a fight this year. It's going to be trouble. If he comes out and he's off or crashes in the main and loses a lot of points, I think it's going to be everybody like, he's a rookie, whatever. I hope Adams at the front. I would love to see him win this title. It would be awesome. I'm not sure. We haven't seen a rookie win the title since Ryan Dungey in 2010, so it's been a while. Could he come out and do a Dunge? I don't know. I feel like the field's a lot deeper now than it was when Ryan did it. That year, if I remember right, Chad got hurt, Stu got hurt. There was a lot of stuff, and then Ryan Villapoto got hurt late in the year. So a lot of stuff happened that caused him to win that title. I think if Adam wins it this year, it'll be a legit deal. There are so many guys. The field is very deep, cliche deep field. I think that Adam has the speed, certainly. The question is, does he have the consistency and stuff to be a title contender? I don't know that we'll have my fifth question answered this week. 2 rounds don't make a title, obviously. But if he's back at the front and he shows speed all weekend, I think you have to at least consider him a legitimate threat for the title. And these guys, I think, really need to be worried. So those are my 5 questions for St. Louis. I'm really looking forward to the race this weekend. I hope it's another barn burner, another exciting event. The change of venue should change things up a little bit. Like I said, the track looks real interesting. I hope for a good night of racing, and then maybe we'll reconvene on Sunday after the race, and I'll share my thoughts on it then as well. So if you like this kind of thing, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Let me know if you like this or not. Like I said, if it's good, we'll keep doing it. If it's something that everybody thinks is not so amazing, maybe we won't. We'll see how it goes here. So let me know on Twitter. My handle is @TonyBlazer, or Instagram. That's @TonyBlazer, or you can certainly hit me up in the comment section below. I read the comments as well. So until we meet again, peace.